Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Going to Ground. I wonder how your Sunday has turned out so far, whether it's been a day of rest or of industry for you, maybe a bit of both. And I hope that you've been able to get outside as part of it. It's been quite glorious here in Wiltshire. I was over in the village of Chilmark this morning for a prayer book service, and it was lovely to make the journey there and to lead the service. It was the colours of autumn are really shining through now, aren't they? Well, on Sundays, I like to read from my blog piece, weekly blog piece, where I reflect on some of the things that I've been up to. But I'm going to read to you one of the earlier ones that I wrote in August whilst Going to Ground was having its own holiday. And this is about a visit to Yorkshire in August. And it's called Petrifying Well. Midday at the Petrifying Well in Knaresborough, North Yorkshire. Strings of small teddies hang like mountaineers from the sheer face, sops of fur hardening by degrees. A plastic lobster with calcified claws, a toy rabbit dangling by its ears. Scores of us watch this dripping gibbet. That's quite hard to say. Dripping gibbet, transfixed by its grim assortment of common or cuddly things, slowly turning to stone. You might have seen the Petrifying Well. It's an amazing place. A slightly unsettling place. An unspecified bulge on the rippling slab above us is, we are informed, a Victorian top hat left there in 1853. Mother Shipton's Cave, billed as Britain's oldest tourist attraction, has drawn paying customers since 1630 to witness this curious alchemy caused by the unusually high mineral content in the springs cascading into the River Nid. Mother Ursula Shipton herself was a renowned soothsayer in Tudor England, born and raised in near prehistoric conditions in the wedge-shaped cave a few yards from the well, her bent figure and portentous maxims becoming an archetype for pub signs and sideshow crones. Having predicted triumphant death will ride London through, she is cited by Samuel Pepys after the Great Fire, the diarist, commenting, Mother Shipton's word is out. While some of her prognostications seem prescient enough, iron in the water shall float as easy as a wooden boat, carriages without horses shall go. The real wonder may be how poor Ursula survived such isolation and penury into old age. Winter in this cave would turn most of us into stone one way or another. The money that continues to be made here, £45, will buy you a dejected-looking bear that looks as if it's fallen into a concrete mixer, is testament to our endless fascination for animate life becoming frozen somehow. Whether Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt for glancing back at Sodom, or C.S. Lewis's chilling sculpture park of cursed creatures, to my mind the most memorable scene in Narnia. Before we too begin to fossilise, I'm keen to fit in two other nearby sites on this short tour. A reunion with family after the estrangement of recent months, stopping first at 3 standing stones known as the Devil's Arrows, retreating like Lot from a bright new housing development. Escape to a home that's the right size for you, urges a notice board. My leaflet observes that the highest of these, at 22 feet 6 inches, is taller than anything at Stonehenge. Wiltshire pride duly chastened. We trace the line of these extraordinary shafts, which sharpen slightly at the top and have been weathered into digits resembling enormous petrified paws. It was a radiant evening, honey-toned, with conversation melting freely as we ambled back to the car through the cornfield. So we chose to drive on to Myton, site of one of the most curious battles in English history. In the early 14th century, Yorkshire was a vulnerable place on the political map, prone to cross-border raids following the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. Edward I, the hammer of the Scots, having stepped in to arbitrate disputes over the succession to the Scottish throne, proceeded violently to assert his own claim as Lord Paramount, bludgeoning this home by the removal to Westminster Abbey of the Stone of Destiny, used for centuries in Scottish coronation ceremonies. Slung like a hassock under King Edward's chair, this discomforting cushion, also known as Jacob's Pillow or the Stone of Scone, has bolstered national coronations ever since. The significance of its return to Scotland on St Andrew's Day in 1996 can hardly be overestimated. Bannockburn confirmed Scotland's resurgence against Edward's hapless son, Edward II. In 1318, whilst the king was occupied trying to recapture Berwick, Scots forces pushed south, hoping to entrap the English queen then in residence at York. It was left to William Melton, the Archbishop of York, to muster a force comprised incredibly of substantial numbers of clergy, secular and religious. Quite how the Chapter of Myton, as this bizarre army became known, expected to repel such an attack is almost comical to envisage. But, drawn to a field between two rivers at Myton-on-Swale, and with the Scots blocking their escape, they were simply lambs unto the shambles. Scores of monks attempted to flee across the river, where, weighed down by woolen habits, they were either drowned or slaughtered. Standing in the dusk on the bridge above this carnage, distanced by time though not by space, there's little need for fortune telling. The ground itself can prophesy. Sleep well, have a good evening. God bless you as you go to ground.